Gulf of Guinea is one of the most dangerous in the world because of widespread cases of piracy affecting a number of countries in West Africa.
Piracy in the Gulf of Guinea has become a global concern, stealing oil cargo and kidnapping foreign nationals for ransom. Heavily armed criminals attack more than 100 vessels every year.
In 2017, about 96 seafarers were kidnapped, an increase from 44 the previous year. According to the 2019 Third Quarter International Maritime Bureau report, out of the 9 ships fired upon, 8 were off Nigeria's coast.
On the 16th of July 2019, 10 Turkish sailors were kidnapped on board a cargo ship off the coast of Nigeria. The Gulf of Guinea is believed to be the most dangerous in the maritime domain.
Joining us is security consultant Onyekachi Adekoya. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Now, talk to us how worrisome, concerning this issue is for you as a security expert.
I think the issues are there, and they're very germane. And the issues affect business and also affect our global economy and how we interface with the global market. You know that 80% of global trade is done using the seaways. It does increase the cost of doing business within the Gulf of Guinea area. Particularly more worrisome is that I think so far this year we've had over 148 cases reported. Now these incidents are categorized into fired upon, hijacked, boarded, suspicious vehicles. Within the Gulf of Guinea, a new troubling trend is that 2 vessels have been boarded off the coast of Lomé, which is not really the trend. What you see is off the coast of Lagos, off the coast of Bonny, 30 to 100 nautical miles off Bonny axis. So we're beginning to see a trend where, you know, it's going beyond Nigeria, which used to be the major trouble spot, now coming up a bit towards Lomé.
Why do you think that this new trend is emerging?
Yeah, so we always talk about the land side. When you talk about issues of maritime security, you talk about the land side. What's happening on land? What are the social, political issues on land? Poverty, the level of poverty, the level of access to this paradox of, I mean, where you have a mixed bag of wealth and poverty amongst plenty. So lack of education, lack of social amenities, people almost don't have a sense of aspiration or direction, and without making any excuse to say that's why they must go into crime. But on the land side, there's a lot of instability, restiveness,
and so that has contributed to the increase of activities by the Gulf.
Oh, absolutely. If you even look at the issue of pollutions of the waters, and you know, most of the people who engage in these activities once upon a time were fishermen, at least people who have understanding of the sea and how to go to sea. You have, beyond the issue of maritime incidents, you also have illegal fishing, smuggling. So there are a number of issues that are affecting people's normal way of life. You know, and people are having to find ways to fend for themselves. In the just concluded Global Maritime Conference held in Abuja, you know, a number of resolutions were reached, and everybody talked about doing something about what's happening on the land side. And in essence, they are saying to the governments within the Gulf of Guinea, hey, you need to begin to look at the people's side, the place and people's side of security, because without dealing with those issues, you can't really solve the issues on sea.
So, problems within the Gulf of Guinea, how does it affect countries around that axis?
Well, number one, increases the cost of shipping. Again, so if you look at before now, you had the Gulf of Aden, which was the most notorious part in terms of maritime incidents. But vessels coming into the Gulf of Aden already know it's a hot spot, so they come prepared.
Okay.
Again, when you're trading into Africa or trading into the Gulf of Guinea, which has a market size of about 412 million people, you can't sell at very high rates. So you also need to be smart about the cost of shipping. So what vessel owners and those who manage vessels are beginning to do are trying to cut corners in terms of how much they invest in security. Going into Gulf of Aden, you don't need to be told. There are weapons on board, there are armed personnel on board. So what has reduced maritime incidents in the Gulf of Aden is just because vessels are not going in without some level of protection on board.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
But when you come down this side, you have to sell to a more discerning market, a market that is a bit pinchy. You can't bear so much cost, even on the goods you are bringing in. You can't bear so much cost on shipping. So some shipping companies try to be smart. Sometimes, in fact, the International Maritime Bureau has alleged that 48% of the incidents that occur in Nigeria are underreported, particularly in the Gulf of Guinea.
All right.
So, yeah, so some of the issues we have.
All right.
Joining us is security consultant Onyekachi Adekoya. Good morning. Thank you for
morning.
joining us on TVC
Thank you
Breakfast.
for having me.
Now, some believe that focusing on fighting piracy alone within the Gulf will not address the issue. Do you share the same view?
Yeah, I do agree with them. We always say that you must look at the land side. I mean, we can't overemphasize the land side before you come to sea, because the people don't live in water or on water, whichever the case is. They must come from somewhere, and now there's something driving them. We generally say in security, there's no smoke without fire.
Absolutely.
So again, the issues of social and political unrest, poverty, lack of education, lack of access to social amenities, the sheer desperation but if you look at, for example, off the coast of Bonny towards the Niger Delta, you look at the impacts of pollution on the way of life of people. These people who before now are just primarily fishermen. They can't fish, they can't do much, they're suffering a lot of environmental degradation. And without making an excuse for them, but to some extent, these are part of the things that fuels.
So what would be a holistic approach to addressing this issue at the Gulf of Guinea?
Yeah, so we take a two-pronged approach. You must take the hard approach, the carrot and stick approach, as a way of speaking. If I first cast our minds back to what's called the Yaoundé Code, where the Gulf of Guinea was zoned, we've seen in Zone D, for example, which is where you have Gabon and some other states, some remarkable progress being made. So I think that other countries within the Gulf of Guinea must find out from that Zone D to find out what exactly it is they are doing to succeed. Then you begin to look at the issues of, in the last Global Maritime Conference in Abuja, part of the resolutions was that government needs to take care more of the people, maybe focus a bit more on the people that live within the coastal lines, people whose means and ways of livelihood has been affected, maybe by global trade, maybe by the oil trade and the rest. So focus on that side, maybe build more schools, give them more employment opportunities as much as they can, and focus on some reintegration, orientation, whatever it is that government has to do. But you must deal with the threats coming from the land side. Right. Once you address those issues and try and bring governance to the people, maybe some of those issues will begin to subside. On the hard side,
quickly.
Yeah, so we're talking about collaboration between the navies. So I think there has to be increased collaboration. There has to be more investment in communication. There are some challenges because even naval technology, sometimes the radars can't sense skiffs. Skiffs are made of wood. So sometimes the vessels don't see them on their radar and they come upon them. So intelligence is needed, collaboration is needed, response must be robust. So I think governments within the Gulf of Guinea would need to continue to invest in their naval assets.
All right. Now, looking at the fact that this is becoming a global concern and it has been happening over the years, the question that comes to mind is, can the countries around the Gulf really handle this case themselves?
I think they can. So the ability, the will to is maybe what we question.
All right.
Then what kind of capacity or capabilities do they have in terms of what their navies bring to the table? Another thing is what kind of resources do they also have to fund the needed level of investment and naval platforms which the Navy should have. If you take out Nigeria from this Gulf of Guinea, you can't say so much. Maybe Ghana. Okay, Ghana, but Nigeria, then I'm not sure. Cape Verde. So, so the issues are there. It's just we begin to look at the will to collaborate. I think if you look at the Yaoundé Code, some success has been noted, particularly in the area called Zone D. They've done fairly well. Even if you look at the 2019 incident register for piracy by the International Bureau of Maritime Bureau, you will see that so far, I think you've had 37 cases of vessels that have been boarded in the Gulf of Guinea. You have 11 cases of vessels that have been shot at, and 5 reported successful cases of vessel hijack in that area. So it does look as though we are entering a season where the waters are less choppy. So
there is the need for them to come together and re-strategize again. That's what you're saying.
Yes. So sincerity of purpose. There must be that sincere desire to collaborate. It's one thing to espouse that collaboration. It's another thing to begin to see those hard assets on ground and increase collaboration response. Response is also very important because that territory is very large. And so far, I think that the Nigerian Navy has had to invest more naval assets into the area. That said, the issues in Nigeria, for example, of the secured anchorage area and the service they did provide, at the time also helped to bring down the number of incidents reported. There's a bit of a tussle between the MPA, the NIMASA, the Navy, and some associations as to whether to continue the secured anchorage area. So there are a number of issues. It's just sincerity and investment that is needed to curb the issues.
Okay, like you mentioned, investment, quite all right.
Yeah.
If Nigeria is investing so much, it can become tiring. The African Union,
yes,
in collaborating, can they do something together to be able to solve that problem? Because it's beyond the West African sub-region. It goes beyond East Africa and all of that. So it connects African continents and all of that.
It's a global problem. 80% of global trade is done through water, so it's a global program. Now, in the Gulf of Guinea, you have foreign navies also operating and patrolling, providing support. You have foreign navies also providing training support, some level of investments. Also within the area, if you talk about Africa, you then have to look at the Gulf of Aden.
Yeah.
So there are a number of investments going on, but you see, you cannot deal with the sea issue only looking at sea. You must also come to land. There are a number of land issues. We talk about insecurity, talk about sources of risk. Where's the threat coming from? The threat to sea is coming from land. The coastal lines, those coastal communities.
And most of the countries have conflicts within that they're dealing with.
Exactly. And a number of them suffer from paucity of funds. Yeah. So they have to scale their priorities to say, okay, how much do we want to invest towards the coastal issues that we're having? We have land issues, so they're having to also
if this is a
pick
problem
and choose.
Now, how do we effectively stop this problem?
We have to leave the discussion at this point.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time, Onyekachi Oyekoya.
Thank you for having me.